Juraj Jánošík was a historical Slovak figure born in the late 1600s in a small village up in the mountains. He grew up during a time when the region was caught between rebellions and strict rules under the Habsburg empires. As a boy, he joined one of the local uprisings against the empire, but when that failed, he was forced into an army. Later on, while working as a prison guard, he met a captured outlaw. They became friends and later formed a group of bandits together. Eventually, his friend left and Jánošík became the leader of that group. His gang operated across the countryside, mainly targeted wealthy merchants and nobilities. What set them apart though from regular bandits was their code. They avoided unnecessary violence and, according to some accounts, even gave some of the stolen goods to poor locals. That part of the story though is debated, but it's a big reason why Jánošík became a folk hero later on. Basically, he's a Slovakia version of Robin Hood. However, his run didn't last long. He was captured, escaped once, but was caught again not long after. Eventually, he was put on trial and sentenced to death. The exact details of his execution are murky, but we know it was brutal, either by hanging or other cruel method reserved for leaders of outlaw groups. In the romanticized version of his story, there's a dramatic moment before his death. Authorities supposedly offered him a quick death in exchange for revealing where his comrades were hiding. Jánošík refused, saying something along the line of, "If you have cooked me, you should also eat me." Even though he was just a bandit in the eyes of the law, over time, he became a symbol of resistance and justice in Slovak folklore. People came to see him as someone who stood up for the weak, and his story has lived on in song, book, and film ever since. Rob Roy MacGregor was born in the late 1600s in the Scottish Highlands, a place known for its rugged beauties and fiercely independent clans. He came from Clan Gregor, a family with a long and complicated history. For decades, the clan had been at odds with the government and other powerful families. Things got so bad at one point that it was even illegal to use the MacGregor names. As a boy, Rob grew up surrounded by these tensions. Like many Highlanders at the time, he turned to cattle trading as a way to make a living. It wasn't just about buying and selling though. Cattle were currency, stature, and survival. Eventually, he got involved with the powerful local leader who loaned him money to expand his business. But things fell apart when one of Rob Roy's men vanished with the cash. Suddenly, unable to repay the debt, Rob lost his land, his home, and his standing. With no way back, he became an outlaw. But he wasn't a typical criminal. He ran a kind of protection network where locals paid him to keep their cattle safe, and he made sure no one else messed with them. Some say he took from the rich and helped the poor, but that part is difficult to confirm. What is clear though is that he became a major thorn in the side of his enemies, especially the man who took his land. He also got mixed up in the Jacobite uprising, a movement that tried to restore a particular royal family to the throne. However, it didn't work out for him, and though he avoided any major punishment for a while, the government eventually caught him and threw him in prison. A few years later, he was pardoned, and he spent his final years quietly back in his homeland. In the early 800s, Sir Walter Scott wrote a novel loosely based on Rob Roy's life. The book turned him into the larger-than-life folk hero, a sort of, again, Highland Robin Hood. Back in the early days of Scandinavia, there was a young princess named Awilda. Her father was a local king, and like many rulers back then, he was extremely protective of her. To keep unwanted suitors away, he locked her inside a tower full of traps and posted a guard outside. However, these guards were not soldiers, but two venomous snakes. The idea was if anyone wanted to win her hands, they had to get past these creatures first to prove their worthiness. One day, a prince from a neighboring kingdom did exactly that. He killed a beast and asked for Awilda's hands in marriage. Her father, of course, was on board with it, but Awilda wasn't. Instead of going along with the plan, she took matters into her own hands. With some encouragement from her mother, she dressed as a man, sneaked out of the palace, and ran away. She didn't just disappear quietly though. After escaping, she sought out a new life far from palace and ended up joining a group of women who had turned to piracy. Before long, she became their leaders, sailing across the sea, raiding ships, and building a name for herself. She was bold, clever, and pretty much someone you don't want to mess with. Eventually, her old suitors, the prince, was sent out to deal with this rising pirate threat. During a battle at the sea, he managed to unmask the pirate captains and was stunned to discover it was Awilda. The two of them ended up reconciling after that, and they got married, and depending on the version of the story, may have ruled together afterward. That said, this story is more of a legend than history, but it stands out as one of the earliest tales of a woman becoming a pirate, and doing it on her own accords as well. The version we're mainly talking about today comes mainly from Gesta Danorum, written in the 12th century, which mixed history with a lot of heroic myth. Louis Mandrin was basically, what do you know, a French version of Robin Hood back in the 1700s. If you haven't noticed by now, it's probably pretty clear that a lot of these characters, personas are pretty much based from thieves who stole from the wealthy and give back to the poor, which is the whole theme about retaking your desire from Persona 5X. Anyway, to continue, he grew up in the countryside and was the eldest in the large family. When his dad passed away, Mandrin had to step up and take care of everyone, even though he was still pretty young himself. At one point, he tried to make a living by supplying mules to the French army, but the deal went south. Most of the animals didn't survive the journey, and the tax official refused to reimburse him. That's when things started to fall apart. Now, here's something important. Back then, France didn't collect taxes the way we might expect. Instead of the government doing it, they let private companies handle it. And those guys were brutal. They could demand whatever they want and were notorious for bleeding people dry. Mandrin couldn't stand them. After one of his friends was executed and he found himself in danger, he fled. That's when he joined up with a smuggling ring. They moved contraband like tobaccos and cloth across the borders into France. And like a lot of these stories I told you about today, Mandrin didn't stay in the background for long. He ended up leading the group and running it like a small military unit. But they didn't lay low. Mandrin and his crew rolled into towns, set up stalls, and sold untaxed goods right out in the open. They even forced some of the tax officials to buy from them. And the public, they love it. He was doing what most people only dream of, standing up to a corrupt system. Over the next couple of years, he pulled off several of these campaigns, and his reputation kept growing. Eventually though, the law caught up to him. The French troops chased him into the neighboring country without permission, took him in. Even though the local ruler protested, Mandrin was hauled back to France. He was quickly put on trial and executed in public. It was a harsh, dramatic ending for this story. But the story didn't end there. People kept his memory alive through songs, story, and legend. And to this day, he is remembered by many as a symbol of resistance. Someone who stood to greed and injustice when few others dare. Mochizuki Chiyome is one of those figures where history and legend blur together. But her story is fascinating either way. She was a noble woman in Japan during the 1500s, around the time the country was caught in constant warfare between rival clans. After her husband, a samurai, died in battle, it's said that she was approached by a powerful leader from his clan with an unusual request to create a network of female agents. Chiyome took the job and set up what was basically a secret training school. She recruited girls who didn't have many options. Some were orphans, some came from rough past, and trained them in the arts of disguise, stealth, and gathering information. These women often posed as prime maidens, which gave them access to places and people without raising suspicion. According to the story, her network grew to include hundreds of women. They act as spy, messenger, and sometimes even assassins, all serving the interests of the clan that supported Chiyome's mission. But what makes her story even more interesting is how quietly it fades. After the death of the clan leader who supported hers, there's no clear record of what happened to her or her network. Some believe she retired, others think the group was disbanded, and some just leave it as a mystery. Now, here's the thing. A lot of historians aren't fully convinced Chiyome's spy network even really exists the way it has been described. Her name doesn't show up in any records from the time, and the earliest detailed story about her don't appear until centuries later. So while the idea of a female ninja commander's training an elite squad is a great story, and it's definitely show up a lot in pop cultures, it's hard to say how much of it is true. Still, the legend of Mochizuki Chiyome has stuck around for a reason. Whether she was real or not, she represents a side of ninja history that doesn't get talked about often. And that alone is worth remembering.